Whether it's getting hardworking folks to their jobs, students to school, or tourists to downtown attractions, the CTA makes it their mission to do it safely. And just like the Chicago Police Department, the CTA serves the people of Chicago every day. That's why enhancing safety on the CTA and ensuring safety across the city of Chicago are one and the same and absolutely vital to our future. Our public safety efforts has always included dedicated work with our public transit partners. That's why today is about growing our collaboration and doing even more. To enhance safety on the red line and blue lines, the Chicago Police Department is adding more officers and supervisors to patrol the busy rail lines. Officers will be visible, and our department will work with the CTA to analyze trends and deploy resources at optimal times and locations. Individuals engaging in criminal activity on public transportation or anywhere in the city for that matter will be dealt with. CTA will always be an extension of this city, from its employees to its services, to the routes to customers, and we finally will not tolerate any crime or public disorder. I would now like to turn it over to Commissioner Carter for comments, and then the mayor after that. Commissioner.
Thank you, Superintendent. Good afternoon, everybody. I also want to acknowledge my chairman, Lester Barkley, who's with us here today, who is in support of the conversation that we're having today. In addition, I want to obviously recognize both the mayor and the superintendent for their ongoing support, and as well as Alderman Hopkins, who's here representing his ward, who I appreciate being here today as we talk about this serious topic. Over the past 2 years, we've all had to respond and adapt to the uncertainties presented to us by COVID-19. And despite those challenges, one thing that has not changed is our tireless collective efforts to provide a safe, reliable, and comfortable transit experience. As you know, throughout the pandemic, we ran as much service as possible to help ensure that Chicago's essential workers and those without other means of transport could get to where they needed to go without hesitation. Sadly, unfortunately, because there are fewer riders on the system for a long stretch of time, this in turn has led some people to feel a little bit more emboldened to engage in unacceptable behavior on CTA. I'm here today to tell you that that is something we will not accept. To our CTA riders, I want you to know that we are aware of how some of your riding experiences have changed and that we are committed to making it better. I'm pleased to share with you that earlier today, the Chicago Transit Board approved 2 new contracts for unarmed security guards, which will more than double the resources that we have to provide security on CTA. As a result of that effort, we'll now have unarmed uniformed security guards patrolling rail stations across the system, but also have enough resources for targeted teams to be deployed and travel on both our buses and our trains. We believe that having a visible presence of guards is an important deterrent to misbehavior and also helps demonstrate our commitment to addressing our riders' concerns. In addition, the guards will also receive training about CTA operations so that they can assist customers with general questions about service. We believe that unarmed guards provide an added layer of eyes and ears out on our system and can quickly report emergencies. We also believe they will help deter incidents of misbehavior and assist the Chicago Police Department as needed. For more than 2 decades, the CTA has used unarmed security guards. Security guards are a key component of our multi-pronged approach for tackling crime on our system, which also includes our extensive security camera network that boasts more than 34,000 cameras on buses, trains, and across our entire system. And of course, our work with the Chicago Police Department, which is the lead entity for law enforcement on our system. Today's announcement is the latest example of how beneficial and collaborative CTA decades-long partnership with CPD is, and that together we have shared a commitment to provide a safe and comfortable public transit experience for everyone. I'm proud to be a partner with Superintendent Brown in endorsing and pursuing this effort, and I look forward to working with him and his team collaboratively as we address this problem on CTA. And with that, it is now my great pleasure to introduce Mayor Lori Lightfoot. Mayor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Superintendent Brown and President Carter. As you've heard, today is about addressing some additional resources that we believe are important and necessary to make sure that all lines on the CTA transit system, the rail lines as well as the buses, are as safe as possible. I want to start, though, by thanking President Carter and the team at the CTA. I want to remind everyone that the Chicago Transit Authority was the only large metropolitan system that continued to function throughout the pandemic. That's an important point because we knew that it was important for workers and other commuters to be able to get back and forth through the city who didn't have the luxury of staying home and doing remote work. Now, as we're seeing ridership tick up, as the city is opening back up because we're in a better place, we're seeing businesses start to call their workers back downtown. We want to make sure that the transit experience is not only safe, but clean and something that we all can be proud of. Our transit system connects each of our 77 neighborhoods, helps us remove barriers to access by getting residents where they need to go in time in a way that is simple and still very affordable. For decades, the CTA has provided that world-class system for our city and has worked day in and day out to ensure the system not only functions properly, but goes above and beyond as it connects each of our communities through buses and rail. We have a number of incredible initiatives planned to enhance the efficiency and accessibility of our transit system even more. But none of that will matter if CTA customers don't feel safe taking public transportation. Recent CPD data shows that violent crime on the CTA is up this year in comparison to the same period last year. I will tell you, and I know all of us agree, that is simply unacceptable. So we are taking the steps that are necessary, following the data, and making sure that there are enhancements. That's why I'm proud to share that the CTA has partnered with the CPD to enhance safety on the busy red and blue lines. To do so, CPD is strategically adjusting resources from within its Bureau of Counterterrorism and will have dedicated gang and narcotics teams investigating crimes on the transit system and patrolling the busy rail lines. In addition, CTA, as you just heard, will further promote safety and comfort during commutes by expanding its use of unarmed contracted security guards. You heard it from the superintendent. You heard it from President Carter. The word is visibility. What we need to do is make sure that on every platform across our system that you, the commuters, see the visibility of sworn police officers as well as these unarmed security guards. And what I will also say to the commuters, if you see something on a train or on a bus that you know is unacceptable, please do not hesitate to call 911 or 311 to report it. We all have to be working together to make sure that our system is safe. And we've got to ensure that our customers, our commuters, know that we are doing everything possible to make sure that the rides and the commuting is safe. So on top of this, the CPD and CTA will continually analyze crime patterns and determining optimal deployment strategies, including times, locations, and numbers of officers, and collaborate to identify and address areas that are experiencing higher occurrences of crime. Enhancing public safety, as I've said many times before, and I will continue to say every single day, has to be the top of mind priority for all of us and requires a whole of government approach. This enhanced partnership is emblematic of that necessary collaboration. And we'll continue to greatly improve our citywide mission of creating a better, safer Chicago for all of our residents. I'd like to again thank President Carter, Superintendent Brown, Alderman Hopkins, who's also been a very invaluable partner in making sure that we are focused on the things that are important to our residents, and that is safety everywhere. And we look forward to the continued partnership. At this time, we're happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thanks a lot, Mayor. Hey, we're going to kick it off.
Sir, when you know, you've been to our press conference before, we do this in an orderly fashion. Keep your mask up. We will call you in turn. We don't do shout-outs, okay? Cesar will call you when it's your turn.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
All right, we'll kick it off with Nate from Fox.
Mayor, good afternoon. Nate, Fox
Good
32.
afternoon.
Asking specifically about buses, I've heard added security, armed guards, as well as police officers on CTA rail lines, that sort of thing, but I've also talked to a number of bus drivers who have been attacked themselves. You all have all heard those stories.
Yes, that's right.
What about security on the actual CTA buses?
Well, the enhancements to the system obviously are focused on both bus and rail, and I'll let the superintendent talk more specifically as well as President Carter, but it's the entire system. It's not, we move a lot of people through rail, but we also move a significant number of people on our bus lines, particularly those most heavy trafficked bus line. I don't know who wants to go first.
I'll go first just to speak about CTA. The increased resources that we're getting under our contract will allow us to deploy not only unarmed security guards on our rail system, but also to deploy unarmed security guards at bus turnarounds and on our buses. So you will see an increased presence on both bus and rail. And so we recognize certainly that our bus operators are also the victims of and subject to assaults as much as our rail operator personnel are.
Just to follow up, I know you all can't or won't disclose all of the details, but in terms of how many, what will that look like? I know it was mentioned red and blue line, but what about the green line? What about the pink line? I'm assuming it's because those rails have the most attacks, if you will, but how many guards, what will that look like? And how soon can Chicagoans see the added security?
You'll see the added security very shortly. We just awarded the contracts literally today. But I should be clear that while we've talked about the red and blue line as a focus, that is not the only place that the security guards will be deployed. They'll be deployed throughout the system, and they will also be deployed throughout the city at various strategic bus locations that we feel warrant attention. So it is a system-wide approach.
Eric from ABC.
Well, wait, Cesar, let the superintendent go before we move in.
Sorry about that, sir.
I just wanted to add to your question, and hopefully it'll answer some of the other questions that may be coming. The mayor mentioned gang and narcotics teams will be dedicated. That's a new feature that we've not seen, along with our CTA, CPD officers who are in uniform. So you will see not only the presence just from the CTA's dedicated CPD uniforms, but also an increased dedication of resources, both from our narcotics and gangs, which is a new feature. We hear complaints from the customers on the CTA that obviously they see drug dealing, they see conflicts associated with gangs. So we're trying to meet that challenge, and we're just not starting today. We have been seeing this for some time and adding resources. We're just at that point where we're seeing more ridership, and we anticipate even more ridership as things open back up, as the mayor mentioned. So we want to add these features. And the answer to the question about, well, how many do you, as much as we need to send to the CTA to make it safe, is the amount of resources we'll send. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sue. Eric?
Yeah. You mentioned you just secured the contracts today for the unarmed security guards.
Is this a question?
Yeah, for President Carter. How many security guards will they be able to arrest and detain, or merely contact CPD? And then also, you mentioned there is an extensive camera network that has not been a deterrent. Why will these unarmed security be a deterrent?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't necessarily agree with your statement that our security cameras are not a deterrent. I think they are a deterrent. But as you recognize, it's hard to measure the crime that doesn't occur. What I can measure is the crime that does occur, and the fact that the cameras that we use in coordination with the investigations that CPD undertakes are a critical component to our ability to address, follow up, and make arrests on incidents that occur on CTA. And by definition, that also prevents future crime from those individuals who may have been involved in this. With regards to the number of security personnel, I don't want to get into exact numbers now, but I'm telling you that we're more than doubling the number of personnel that we have, and the impact that they're going to have is going to be felt system-wide. So it is a substantial increase in resources beyond what we currently have doing this work for us here at CTA.
Double the current number of
Yes.
unarmed security?
Yes,
Okay.
it's double the current number of unarmed security. I should also point out, they are not sworn police officers. They do not have the ability to arrest or do other things, but they work very closely with CPD and will contact and inform CPD if there's a need for them to be involved. They, in effect, become more eyes and ears on our system to look out for and to address inappropriate behavior, and where necessary, to bring CPD in to assist if that becomes an issue.
All right, Joel Hillary from WGN.
Hi, good afternoon. Question about the shooting that occurred on the Red Line at 63rd last night. Are there any new details as it relates to that investigation?
Yes, we'll have Chief of Detectives Brendan Dinahan address that question. Thank you.
So that just occurred last night, as you mentioned, and detectives are assigned to it. Currently, it's an open and active investigation. I know someone previously mentioned about cameras, but the CTA cameras are invaluable for the detectives, and we have detectives that are, embedded with CTA personnel. So currently, we have the video of that, and we're working on it. It appears that these two individuals knew each other, so this was not a random attack. But obviously, a shooting did occur. We have not been able to interview the victim at this time, but we're going to interview the victim. We're looking at video, and then we may push something out later. But it appears these two individuals definitely knew each other.
Thank you. And then I had a slightly off-topic question for the superintendent as it relates to Selena Claiborne, the security guard from WGN who was killed recently. I know that there has been an arrest, but I wanted to see if you could give any more details in terms of the circumstances surrounding her death, and if you have any remarks for her loved ones and her family.
First of all, condolences. There is a relationship with CPD officers to the victim as well. And so condolences to the family. Obviously, we are grieving with this family, and we are doing everything we can to hopefully bring some small measure of closure to the family with this arrest. But apparently the victim, as we've already recounted, was just trying to get gas and was confronted. Altercation ensued, and the victim was shot and subsequently passed from the shooting. The two individuals, one a juvenile, one an adult. I believe the juvenile is going to be charged as an adult, but we're awaiting that in court. Were caught subsequent to the incident happening. And again, I would just say the efforts of our officers is just extraordinary given the challenges that they face in closing these cases as quickly as they had. We're seeing a 60% clearance rate on homicides right now, which is higher than we've seen in the recent past at least. But again, the deepest condolences to the family is really our utmost concern right now, to make sure that we do all we can to bring the criminal justice system down to bear on these offenders, to send not only a message for these offenders, but to others that will commit violent crime in this city.
Thanks a lot, Sue. Edith from Telemundo.
Beside the safety, I was talking with a few customers from the CTA, and they also mentioned that other of their concerns is the homeless, that apparently they're more homeless, and also apparently they're using a couple of trains as a bathroom. That's the way that they say it.
So your question is about homeless folks that are on the trains. This has been a consistent. I'm sorry. This has been a consistent challenge for the system really throughout the pandemic. We have spent an inordinate amount of resources doing outreach with social services organizations led by the Department of Family and Support Services throughout the pandemic. One, because obviously we're concerned about the health and well-being of homeless folks everywhere, but particularly in our system, making sure that they had access to care, to testing, and then doing everything we could to transition them from the trains to supportive housing. And while that work is ongoing, I think as we see more people return to the system, we're going to see less and less of those challenges. But it is a challenge. I'm not going to tell you that it isn't. And I know, President Carter, if you want to address that issue as well.
No, I think the mayor summed it up quite accurately. I have described the homeless problem as one of the most complex and challenging problems I've had to deal with in my career in public transit. And I should point out that it's not unique to CTA. This is an issue that's happening to transit systems all over the country. I think the mayor is correct. The strategy that we're deploying, which is to really try to get social services more involved on CTA, to provide them support, to help them deal with their challenges and hopefully get them into a better situation than being on public transit, I think is the solution. I think it's also safe to say that there's nothing good about living on public transportation. One of the other things that I'm excited about with our security guards is that part of the training that they will be receiving will be around how to de-escalate and how to deal with the homeless population, and hopefully they can provide additional support to our social service agencies in terms of identifying and working with the homeless population to get them into a better place.
Kate Chappell, NBC.
My question, oh, sorry. Just wondering if, President, you can just talk more so about, I know it was just approved this morning, so the logistics are still being worked out, but just, you said shortly we'll see more of these guards. Are we talking about tomorrow? And what hours, is this all hours of the day that commuters or just during the busy times can expect to see more guards?
No, you're going to see them 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. They're not going to be out tomorrow because we still have to sign the contracts and everything, but I would say certainly in the next couple of weeks, you'll start to see the additional resources being deployed.
Jackie from CBS.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure I sort of understand correctly, but will CTA riders see CPD officers on the trains, on the buses, and these unarmed private security guards, or is it the unarmed security guards who will actually be riding the trains and buses, CPD officers more so on platforms and end stations?
So I'll take the CPD portion of it. So you'll see CPD resources on the trains. We'll actually have a operation that deals with buses as well, where you'll see officers in and around and on buses that have been problematic. We're running criminal statistics to give us some leads on, where are the peak crimes, when they happen, locations, days of the week, time of day, et cetera. But also on the platforms, on the trains as well, working in coordination with the unarmed security.
John from Street Spot.
So in New York, which has a much larger transit system than Chicago, they just announced that they're spending $100 million to put platform doors at all their stations. Yeah. So that keeps people from going onto the tracks, get their phone. We had someone in Chicago die that way. Last fall, we had a woman who was visiting for the marathon get randomly shoved onto the tracks by a person with mental illness. They also help prevent suicides. They allow the trains to run faster. Is that something you would consider doing?
Well, I'll start and then I'll pitch it to President Carter. Obviously, we're always looking for ways to make sure that the system is safer. Watching with great interest what the folks in New York are doing. But, I think we've got to make sure that we are shoring up our resources here in the first instance. But I'll pitch it to President Carter now.
Sure. I think the short answer to your question is yes, we are looking at that same situation. One of the things that we've recognized over time is that technology for dealing with this kind of a problem is ever evolving. We face the same challenge that New York faces in that our system itself is very old, and retrofitting it to put in barriers is actually a prohibitive expense. But I would recognize that there are new technologies now that may not be as expensive that we are looking at and determining whether or not they might be a good fit for something we might want to do here at CTA.
Sure. And also, so it seems like a lot of the sanitation and crime issues on the CTA, obviously not all of them, are driven by the phenomenon of people using the CTA as a last resort shelter, often people with mental illness. So we're spending $3 million on this security contract. Has there been any consideration to using increased funding for housing for the homeless and mental health services as a strategy to improve sanitation and safety on the CTA?
Well, I can't speak to what the other city resources may be that are placed on addressing the homeless problem. I think that the money that we're spending at CTA for security services is going to be money well spent, both in terms of the increased visibility that it will provide to our customers, and also for their ability, as I indicated earlier, to interact with the homeless population and others to provide assistance and to help with the social service agency at the city to determine other alternatives other than being on CTA. But I'll let the mayor speak to the broader issue.
What I would also say is it's not one or the other, it's both and. We have committed in our $1.2 billion investments to making sure that we continue to shore up resources both for mental illness and trauma across our city, in addition to providing additional resources specifically for homelessness prevention, as well as making sure that we're expanding our offerings of affordable and transitional housing. So I don't think it's a one solution. As President Carter said, and he's absolutely right, the complexity of homelessness in our city, but particularly those folks who have gravitated towards the transit system, is complicated. We've been working on this issue diligently throughout the pandemic, want to make sure that those folks are not going to be more vulnerable to COVID-19 infections than any other portion of our population. And we've spent a huge amount of time. There's a whole team and a strategy that is used to engage with homeless people that are on our trains, leading with our social services. And we've allocated even more resources in this budget, as we did last year. We're topping it this year to make sure that we're continuing to have a network of care to be able to engage with our homeless population all across the city, whether it's encampments, whether it's in shelters themselves, and certainly on the transit system. So we've got to do both. I don't think we say, well, $3 million is too much, well, let's do this. It's got to be both and.
Thanks a lot, Mayor. Heather Sharon, WTTW.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi there.
The Washington Post reported this morning that 70% of all of the police misconduct settlements paid out by the city in the last 10 years came against officers who had been named in one or more lawsuits. Is the city doing a good enough job preventing officers from committing multiple acts of misconduct at the expense of taxpayers?
Well, obviously I can't account for what happened over the last 10 years since I haven't been mayor yet for 3 years. But I can tell you it's a specific focus of mine. You know this, given my background, both as a president of the police board, as also the leader of the Police Accountability Task Force, and now as mayor, we've made a priority on making sure that we're doing everything we can to provide much better training, because we think training really is a key to reducing the incidences of actual misconduct that may be alleged or committed by Chicago police officers. To me, training is absolutely the key. We've also got to make sure that we've got a system of accountability, that we're being fair and even-handed with honest mistakes, but we have no tolerance for people who are intentionally engaging in misconduct. That's a critical part of what the superintendent and I believe around police reform and accountability. It's also mandated as part of the consent decree. And then beyond that, we are spending a significant amount of time looking at the allegations that are being brought in lawsuits. And there's a team of people that meet on a regular basis in the law department, the CPD, and elsewhere to determine what's going on here. Is this a fail of training? Is it a fail of supervision and leadership? Is it a fail of policies? When we get these allegations that come in from lawsuits. So we spend a lot of time doing the analysis that's necessary so that we have a feedback loop, both in terms of particular officers, particular units, supervisors, and whether or not our policies are really matching up with the realities of what's happening on the ground. I don't know, Suf, if you want to add to that or not.
Yeah, I think one of the things we've consistently emphasized is training, training, training. I mean, we started, if you go back 10 years, most of those 10 years, we had 0 required training for officers ongoing that were veteran officers. And we're at 40 hours for each officers annually. So that's a significant improvement from just a year and a half ago, in addition to policy compliance with the consent decree that really was the basic baseline for improving officer behavior as it relates to not only misconduct but civil litigation subsequent to that conduct. So I think that we're well on our way to continuing this effort of minimizing civil litigation while improving our policies and training for our officers.
And I have a question from Greg Pratt of the Tribune for the mayor.
Can I just add? I think it's also important for us to kind of step back. This is probably the most challenging time in the history of policing in this country to be a member of the police. Everything that they do is hyper scrutinized because people are walking around with literally, incredible cameras on their phones everywhere. We were talking about the camera system in the CTA. We have a network of cameras all over our city that help us, but also magnify events that happen. It's really hard to be the police now. So that's why I draw this differentiation, which I think is important, between honest mistakes that can be addressed through training and coaching, and those of intentional misconduct. We cannot paint with a broad brush. I think we make a mistake if we do that, but obviously all of us have to step up and are held to a higher standard because of, I think, the time that we are living in, and we want to make sure that our officers are supported, that they can do their jobs, they do their jobs with good training around all of the different efforts that are necessary to be the police in this difficult time. But also, again, if we're seeing a pattern of misconduct, that we jump on it as quickly as possible. So we don't continue to see what we've seen over the last 10 years, almost $1 billion in payouts and settlements, judgments, and attorney's fees. That money would be better spent, obviously invested in our neighborhoods and on other things that help strengthen our city.
And Greg Pratt wanted to ask about the lawsuit filed by the former Park District lawyer. Do you deny making the remarks that he quoted you as saying, and do you believe that you owe Chicago's Italian-American community an apology?
Well, I addressed that last week. What I find interesting is allegations by a plaintiff lawyer who wants to, frankly, shake us down for money are taken as having a level of credibility which I don't think that they warrant. I addressed this in a very, I thought, robust statement on Friday, which I will repeat here. I don't normally comment on pending litigation, but I am deeply, deeply offended and reject as ridiculous the allegations that are in that lawsuit, and particularly any suggestion that I hold animus towards Italians or Italian Americans, because nothing could be further from the truth. I said this on Friday, which Greg Pratt knows. I'm not going to comment any further on this pending litigation, but I'm 1,000% confident that when the facts come out in that lawsuit, that the words that I've uttered today and the statement that I made on Friday will be fully vindicated.
Thanks, Mayor. Meyer from ABC.
Superintendent Brown, I think the mayor addressed this, but I just want to be sure, are the officers you're adding for this effort coming from any specific unit, or will it require any kind of overtime of all your officers?
So here's how I put it to our officers in the Counterterrorism Bureau. You own the CTA. It's not an extra thing you got to do. It's part of what we should do, is make the CTA safe for all Chicagoans, and to include tourists and other visitors that we have. So again, part of the job for the Bureau of Counterterrorism, what's different is the effort for narcotics and gang units to be a part of the presence and the activities that our police officers will conduct, both in an undercover plainclothes capacity and in a uniform capacity, and throughout the CTA system, not just red and blue lines that has seen an uptick in crime. And I just want to back the context of this up. These last 8 weeks, the first 8 weeks of this year, we've seen an uptick. But last year, 11% decrease in crime on the CTA. So, we're getting on top of this. We've recognized it at the beginning of the year, but we're continuing to evolve our efforts to meet the challenge of public safety on the CTA and across the city and neighborhoods.
Thanks a lot, Sue. Josie from the Sun-Times.
Yeah, so who made the decision to pull the officers who made the arrest involving Chief Talley's car from the street, and why?
I made the decision. We forwarded the investigation to the Inspector General. We are not commenting any further on the investigation. The why is, until we fully understand all of the conduct of every officer involved, is why we pulled them. And we'll take whatever action the Inspector General's report reveals.
Is it common to drive a car to a police facility and then bring it back to the scene of an arrest without being impounded?
So I'm going to say it again for the back of the room. We're not commenting any further on the investigation until the independent body, the Inspector General's officers, conducts the complete, full investigation. It would be inappropriate to comment, to innuendo, to gossip or rumor, because that's what this is. Until the Inspector General's investigation is complete, all of it is conjecture, innuendo, gossip, and rumor. And we should refrain from that until all of the facts are revealed by an independent body, the Inspector General. Thank you.
Superintendent, Mayor, thank you. That's a wrap, everyone. Appreciate it.
We got a question here.
Thank you very much.
I can hold it.
Do you want me to wear my mask while I'm? Oh, okay. Sorry about that. So, Mayor,
I'm just going to tell you, you're blocking one of the cameras.
well, I'm asking a question if you don't mind. Okay. Do I wear a mask while I'm asking a question? Is that okay?
Why don't you answer the question?
Mayor Lightfoot, during the out-of-control race riots in Chicago in 2020, you were seen marching around with a fist in the air. You were heard making anti-police comments. Now we have violent criminals who believe that they own the streets of Chicago. We have experienced police officers who have actual on-the-street experience arresting violent criminals, just throwing up their hands and retiring early.
Is there a question, sir?
Yeah. Do you feel that
What
you
is it?
are?
Let's get to it.
Do you feel that the citizens of Chicago who have lost faith in you are correct and that you should retire immediately?
So there's a lot. There's a lot of misstatements in what you said.
Okay.
There were no out-of-control race riots in the city of Chicago in 2020. And sir, let me just. You asked your question. If you want an answer, you make a speech, but you don't want me to respond. So now I'm going to respond. Your characterization of what happened in this city in the summer of 2020 is a gross characterization of what actually transpired. So I don't even know where to begin to start to deconstruct the myths and the facts and the outright mistruths in your statement. We had a challenging time in the summer of 2020, as did almost every city in the country. Our officers responded to a historic civic outcry, and as you remember, during that time, we had three things that were happening. Peaceful protests that got hijacked by vigilantes who tried to disrupt and came for a fight with the police, and we saw that play out, unfortunately, way too many times, as well as organized gangs and criminals that were engaged in retail thefts. I think the police department rose to the occasion and handled this unprecedented circumstance as best they could. And once again, sir, you're blocking camera, but I guess you don't care about that. So I think that's probably as much as your question warrants. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone. Have a great one.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks.